Still not in. I can go around this way.
Yeah, I know I can open up Zoom, so I just was trying to.
Nick's shirt is very white.
I know, like I wish it looked this white in real life.
I'm thinking that you use Clorox.
That's right. you use those optical brighteners. That's what it is.
I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm doing something.
It's all good.
We just got to learn your secret.
I'm just going to try this one more time, guys. Sorry, I don't know if they're still connecting to the audio. It says they're on to me. Hi, New Kent County Board. This is Chris Hall in Congressman Rob Whitman's office. I know you all have my number. If there's any difficulties, please let me know. Thank you.
And Chris, I see both a phone number on. I don't know if that is you or one of your folks, in 804-557-3041. That is muted, but appears to be able to hear sound.
Yes, it should be one of their board members.
Okay.
Mr. Hall.
It looks like they have audio now, so let me go check. New Kent County Board, this is Chris Hall in Congressman Rob Whitman's office. Can you all hear me? Oh.
Yes, we can hear you. Chris, are you able to hear us?
The line is muted.
Okay, it's muted.
Hey everyone, I'm actually on the phone with the New Kent Board and they're trying to get unmuted, so just give me 1 second.
Chris, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great.
I'm hanging up the phone.
Perfect. Well, hello, New Kent County Board. This is Chris Hall in Congressman Rob Whitman's office. I have Secretary Valentine on. I have Congressman Rob Whitman on as well, and Nick Donohue in the Secretary's office. Please feel free to contact me via this chat. And I know the board has my cell phone number, and also the Secretary's office has my cell phone number. If there's any complications during this, please feel free to give me a call, and I'd be happy to help. But as of right now, I will pass it over to the New Kent County Board of Supervisors. I know we had an agenda of some potentially opening statements, but please feel free to take it away from here.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. This is Thomas Evelyn, Chairman of the New Kent County Board. Real quick, I would like to open our meeting. This is Wednesday, September 8th, regular Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Ms. Watkins, will you call the roll?
Mr. Evelyn?
Here.
Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Page? Here. Mr. Steers?
Here.
And Mr. Lockwood?
Here.
All right, thank you. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank Congressman Whitman and Secretary Valentine for being here on this meeting today. I know we have a limited time with you guys, so I will turn it over to Congressman Whitman.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for the opportunity. We are encouraged by some of the things that have been going on both at the state level and the federal level, and we wanted to make sure that we were in contact. I know there's been a significant amount of discussion about how to finish the Interstate 64 project from Bottoms Bridge to Route 199. I know that obviously it has a significant impact on New Kent County, but also significant impact on the region, both the Richmond region and the Hampton Roads region. So I've had great conversations with Secretary Valentine, and she's going to speak, but I can assure you she is doing everything that she can humanly do to make sure that this project gets underway. I know how incredibly important it is for the county. I know I've had conversations with the board members about how high priority it is for the county, and you have my word that we will do everything we can in every way that we can to help with this. And you know, one of the areas that's a great potential for us is, you know, making sure that we're doing things regionally, whether it's at the state level and how they look at projects, or even at the federal level. You know, the larger scale of regional cooperation really puts projects higher up on the list, and we know how incredibly important this project is to the region. So I want to make sure we're doing everything we can to encourage that. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield back to you and look forward to the conversation, and anything that I can add, I am standing by.
Thank you, Congressman Whitman. Any board members have any questions or comments from Congressman Whitman?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Page.
Good evening, Congressman Whitman, Secretary Valentine. I thank you, Congressman Whitman, for setting up this meeting. I have spoken several times at during our VDOT session, and with Secretary Valentine present. I think that everyone knows, including our region, knows the passion and the necessity to widen I-64 through the 29 miles of New Kent County. As a matter of fact, we do know the importance of working together regionally. That's why the Central Virginia Transportation Authority was absolutely formed. And so we know that a lot of taxpayer dollars are going into our infrastructure, and it even brings it closer to home when we look at the hurricanes that happen so far but so close to us, and we are hurricane evacuation route here through New Kent County. I have also taken the opportunity to speak with the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority, as well as the authority in Northern Virginia. And so in attending a NACO conference, and we had U.S. Secretary of Transportation, and I'll call him Mayor Pete, was there, and he said, reach out to your local. And so, sir, we have indeed been in discussion with the Richmond Region Transportation Planning Organization, as well as the Central Virginia Transportation Authority and VDOT. And so today was an opportunity that you all presented for us to meet with you. And even though I-64 widening is a major concern of ours and all of our constituents here, and even those that travel through this beautiful county, we do have a couple of other major things that are happening in our county. So we thank you for the opportunity to be with us and just give us guidance of how we can get this interstate widened before 2030.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Any comments, Congressman, or I can turn it over to Secretary Valentine for her introduction.
Just thank you to Supervisor Page. I know that she, along with the other board members, have been very focused on this and relentless, which is exactly what needs to happen in order for this to get done. So I can assure you that there is a high level of desire from New Kent County to the regional entities, to the state, to the federal level, to make sure we get this project done. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman. Welcome, Secretary Valentine. Thanks for coming, being part of our meeting this afternoon. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be with you. Supervisor Page, thank you for your comments. And I just say hello to all of the members of the board. It's always a pleasure for me to be with Congressman Whitman. I think of all members of our federal delegation, I can't think of one who's been more supportive of infrastructure and infrastructure investment. So really a great thank you to you, Congressman, and Chris, thank you for setting up this meeting. I am joined today by Deputy Secretary Nick Donohue, who is calling in, joined in the room by my Deputy Secretary John Lawson. So I always say I work with the best team in government, and they represent that. So we are all very happy to be with you. I thought I might just talk through kind of what has brought us to this moment, through which, you know, through all of this time, I do want you to know that 64 is a priority for the Commonwealth, and the 64 gap, while it is a challenge, a $500 to $600 million challenge, it remains a priority for us. And we're always trying to think of creative ways to address this gap along one of our major corridors. I don't know if any of us could have predicted the past year and a half. It has been certainly an amazing time to live through, having to deal with the pandemic, the financial implications of the pandemic, and all of the uncertainty. I know this past year, just back in August, I think August 18th, you know, the governor announced that for FY21, the Commonwealth of Virginia is seeing quite a significant surplus in the general fund for this single year. For those of us who work in transportation, the financial picture has been a little bit different. And of course, we work over a 6-year window, sometimes longer, depending on how we're putting together a financial forecast. But, you know, in FY20, we were down literally $120 million. And through FY22 through FY27, we're looking at about a $1.5 billion shortfall in transportation, which is very significant for us. I think there have been some incredibly smart decisions that have been made that have allowed us in working in infrastructure and transportation to be able to manage the reductions and the uncertainty. One, starting with the passage of the omnibus bill, the governor's transportation bill in during the 2020 General Assembly session. Very important bill because it made a financial commitment to all modes of transportation and restructured our revenue. So that was really, really important. Without that bill, we would have been in much more critical shape. There was another major decision, and that was during the special session of 2020, where we had a budget amendment passed that granted flexibility to the Commonwealth Transportation Board to allocate existing resources so that projects that received funding in the early years but did not require those funds until the outer years, we could put every dollar to work today. And by doing that, we have maintained every project in our pipeline, all of our contracts, and all of our workforce. I think from looking at an economic standpoint for Virginia, it was the smartest thing we could do. And now we are dealing with forecast and reforecast. Our next forecast is going to be coming in December. I think and hope that it's going to be far more positive than our previous forecast. I know everyone's looking forward to it, but I can assure you that how we are managing all of this will be in the most responsible way. All this to say that as we have been walking through this, we never lost sight of our major priorities, and one of those being the I-64 gap. When we were walking through the budget this past year, some of you may remember that Congress passed the COVID relief funds. It was signed in December. It was December 27th of 2020, and I remember this, Congressman Whitman, very vividly, because not only did it include COVID relief funds, which I'm going to get to in a moment, it also included the language for the Longbridge Act. And Congressman Whitman was a huge sponsor for us in getting this very important language through for us to move forward with the Longbridge, construction of Longbridge, and transforming rail in Virginia. But on December 27th, there was COVID relief funds. Some of those funds did come into Virginia. I believe it was 300 and I did write it down, $323 million. The funds had to be tied to existing projects that lost revenue or to ongoing negotiations. And that's how the allocations and the process for going through this was made. One of those was the Hampton Roads Express Lane Network. It was predicting a revenue loss of about $93 million. We included that as one of the priorities for COVID relief. General Assembly passed that. But as a condition, we also added to it the 64 gap. Right now, Hampton Roads, HR TAC is going through, they're updating their financial model. We don't know exactly where that is. We should know in the coming months. But should their model improve and there were extra funds available, those funds would be directed towards the 64 gap. So that is one of the steps we took earlier in the year to see if we could begin directing funds to it, even in this time of facing tremendous reductions. One of the other things that we did was, while Congress was bringing forward the concept of earmarks, we actually looked at introducing that same concept to them, which also included the 64 gap. And I was going to ask John Lawson, who was responsible for submitting our earmarks up in Washington, to maybe just walk through that process real quickly.
Yes. Good afternoon. As Secretary Valentine said, we did kind of follow the same approach when we were looking at potential federal earmark opportunities this past spring, summer. As you know, most of the earmarks ended up being very small in nature, and $10 million and less, so they don't go very far. But in keeping true to our what we saw as our priority projects, we also brought forward the same Hampton Roads Express Lane Network as a potential project for an earmark. Again, knowing that its $93 million size or price tag was much smaller than what would be needed for the 64 gap, but also knowing that any monies that we may get would follow that same waterfall and allow the $93 million of state monies that could potentially be needed for the Express Lane Network to flow down to the 64 gap. So we were trying to play the odds and try to find the best chances we could to get that amount of money to flow down to help move this project forward. So in addition to that, while that did not quite work out as we had hoped, we wanted you to know that it was still a priority for us. In 2019, some of you may remember, we passed funding for I-81 over in West Virginia. It's actually a misnomer because we actually created an interstate fund, an interstate operations and enhancement program. That program was codified in the omnibus bill that passed in January of 2020. And so, Nick, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you want to just share a little bit about this program and how we are working to try to identify, we're getting money to our major interstates, which includes 64.
Yes, thank you, Secretary Valentine, and thank you, members of the board, for the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. As the Secretary mentioned, in 2019, we really, in the Commonwealth, reestablished a dedicated funding program for our key interstate corridors in Virginia. And that program is structured in a way where interstates 81, 95, and 64 have dedicated funding. And then there's discretionary money in addition to those funds that can be used on any interstate corridor. As a part of that, the General Assembly required the Commonwealth Transportation Board to develop interstate corridor improvement plans for those three main interstates. Those have been developed for both I-81, 95, and I-64. I'm happy to let you all know that in the I-64 corridor improvement plan, considering widening of 64, between 295, or I guess 205, excuse me, and 199 down at exit 234 is included as one of the potential projects there, which is extremely important because being in that plan is a requisite to then be eligible for this interstate funding. The board is currently in the process of evaluating and considering potential projects for award there. In total, over the next 6 years, the board has about $438 million in the interstate program that it can award to projects. So again, we've been working with the board. We've published some prioritized results, and I expect in the coming months or even potentially weeks, they'll be taking action on some of those initial allocations. But again, every several years, there will be another hunk of money that will be available for allocation for those kind of key projects identified in the interstate corridor improvement plans, which the I-64 gap is included again in the I-64 corridor improvement plan.
So as Nick, so I would say that in all of these different avenues, none of them can fund the entire amount that is going to be required to complete the gap. For me, I think it's important because if there were a way for us to leverage these funds, I think that creates the greater opportunity for us. If we could leverage funding at the state level, what we would be able to identify, if we could bring in the Central Virginia Transportation Authority with perhaps funding they may have, even approach Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, HR TAC, to see if there were a way to work with them on some regional funding, and then package that to apply for discretionary funding with the federal government. As you all know, Congressman Whitman can certainly speak to this better than I. With the potential of having an infrastructure package passed, while most of that funding will go to programs that currently exist and perhaps raising the amount of money going into those programs, there will be opportunities for discretionary grants. And I really believe if we could find a way to package regional funding with state funding and approach the federal government and apply through and compete for some of these discretionary funds, that we may really create a more substantial opportunity in moving this forward. Again, it's preliminary because we haven't seen Supervisor Page, as you know, Central Virginia Transportation Authority is new. You're in the Richmond District, collaboration with the Hampton Roads District. It's a manner of determining what is the financial modeling for the Hampton Roads Express lanes going to be, what are we able to leverage out of the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program. But if we could find a way to do this, I just want you to know that we very much would want to partner with you. And so with that, I don't know, Congressman Whitman, if there's anything you might want to add to that.
Absolutely, Secretary Valentine. I think those observations are exactly the opportunities that may present themselves. We'll still see what unfolds with infrastructure, but I think your thought of combining the regional authorities' focus on the 64 gap, because as we know, it does in a way transect different planning districts. While New Kent is in the Central Virginia Planning District, the connector is to the Hampton Roads area. So I think getting both of those entities together to say that this is indeed a project that's important to both entities and one that they would advocate for would be incredibly powerful, as well as what the Commonwealth Transportation Board would put out there, which is already has the GAP project in the interstate plan, which is a good thing. That's the segment that shows the state cooperation. I do believe that makes the project, in whatever comes out of infrastructure, extraordinarily competitive, whether it is in a discretionary competition or whether it is in money that may go to interstate programs. So I think that's a very powerful way to look at this. The more of our regions that will be in agreement with this project, the better off it will be. As we see, the Hampton Roads area has been pretty effective in leveraging their regional cooperation. They've been willing to also put into place priorities on projects that may not always benefit, all localities at the same time. But looking at this project, I think everybody sees how incredibly important it is to Central Virginia and Hampton Roads. And while it may not be a direct benefit immediately to those counties, I would argue in the long term it is of significant benefit. So that's a great opportunity, I believe, for us to be able to move this project up the priority list and then be able to be very competitive when funds do become available.
So, Mr. Chairman, those were just some remarks. We were trying to address some of the issues that you had on your agenda. Before I just turn this over, Nick Donohue, I know you may need to sign off early. He really works a great deal for us with our federal partners. And is there anything you may want to add?
No, Madam Secretary, I think you and Congressman Whitman, really hit it there. I think cooperation and then also exploring potentially, some of these federal grants that we can all try to work together to find a path forward, I think is really a great opportunity. And I think, key will be if that bill passes, trying to understand with USDOT, like what it is they're looking for and understanding how those grant programs work. Some of those will be new. And so we'll all have to kind of learn in real time if those opportunities come about.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Secretary. We really appreciate the update. And, obviously this is a joint effort between federal and state and the local. So we really do appreciate the update, and anything on the local level that we can do, I can promise you we'll be more than willing to step up to the plate and help you in any way possible.
Well, Mr. Chairman, what I would offer, I think, is a great opportunity. I know that you all have done this, but I think as the Central Virginia Regional Transportation Authority gets underway, is to emphasize this 64 gap project and then continue to reach out to HR TAC. And if there's a way that you can formalize at least initial agreement to say that both of those entities would be in favor of prioritizing the 64 gap project and to get out in front, in other words, start to try to bring that together now, that puts you in a really good position when eventually these dollars become available at the federal level, because that intention of both of these regional authorities and New Kent County working together, as well as what this TTB plan, that's get a very, very powerful opportunity for you as whatever funds come out from transportation and infrastructure become available.
I think that's a very good point. We've always been stuck between Richmond and Hampton Roads. We don't know which way to go.
Well, I think Secretary Valentine's suggestion of doing both is a great suggestion.
We get double the money. That sounds good. For New Kent.
Exactly right. You just tell Central Virginia and Hampton Roads that you're one child with two families.
Exactly. All right. Well, I'll turn it over to any of my fellow board members have any questions for the Secretary or Congressman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Ms. Lockwood.
Hello, this is John Lockwood. I would just like to request on both from Secretary Valentine and from Mr. Whitman that we also get as much assistance from you in working with Hampton Roads. There's an awful lot of construction going on in Hampton Roads. They're putting in that third crossing that they've needed for decades, so that's finally starting to take place. It's worrisome at the same time when you take a look at all the infrastructure that's being built up in Hampton Roads, and God forbid we should get hit with a hurricane and have to evacuate that area. It's just almost reckless for us to only have these two lanes going through New Kent. It's the major evacuation route for all of Hampton Roads. So I would hope that, maybe at y'all's level, we could get some assistance working with congressional delegations and move that bar forward some. That's really my biggest part on 64 is being able to utilize that regional cooperation between Hampton Roads and Richmond, as well as at a state and federal level with the congressional delegation.
Well,
Thank
certainly, I'll reach out to Representative Scott, to Representative Luria, to Representative McKeechin, and ask for their support. And maybe what we'll do is put together a letter to both Central Virginia Transportation Authority and Hampton Roads TAC to let them know that we are in favor of regional cooperation on the 64 GAP project, and any way that we can help, we are standing by. So.
And Supervisor Lockwood, that is such a great point to bring up the evacuation route, because that makes it a corridor with national significance. And so, Congressman, that letter becomes even more valuable. So I think that's an excellent point. I will also just say that our team linked the GAP to HR TAC and their Express Lane network. So we linked you in that funding formula for a very important reason. So the preliminary work is being done, but you certainly have my commitment and the commitment of my team to try to bring together a very strong collaborative partnership.
Yeah. And John, I'll make sure that we immediately work on a letter that encourages that cooperation, and that the hurricane evacuation route is incredibly important to the entire Commonwealth. Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I just would like to recognize that actually Patricia Page is the one that brought up the hurricane evacuation route. I'm just in agreement with her.
Gotcha.
Anyone else?
Congressman Rob Whitman, this is Ron Steers, District 4 Supervisor.
Hey, Ron.
And
Ron.
Secretary Valentine. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us today. It's very obvious you know what our needs are, and I'm sure you guys will do the best you can to help us find the funding to complete a much-needed project for our area. And we just appreciate your time today for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, thank you. Thanks for the entire board's purpose and leadership on this. You all have been very focused on this, and that's what it takes to get projects of this magnitude done. So thanks again for all of your efforts.
Ms. Page? Congressman, I know you and I spoke a few times, and we got some mutual friends over there, Johnny Morris in the logging business.
Yes.
And Mr. Lockwood, I know in his district with the paper mill going there, with the 90,000 pound permit that the state approved for logging trucks coming up and down local roads. I was just wondering, is there any update or any movement at all? I know it's a tough issue with the railroads and everything, but we down here at the courthouse coming down 249. I know what you're familiar with. All the log trucks are going right down 249 because they can haul 90,000 pounds, and if they get on interstate, they can only haul 800. So that's about a $7,000-8,000 ticket if they get pulled over the interstate. And being in the logging business, we have to, you're getting paid by weight, so it's kind of important to get as much tons per load on each load. So I was just wondering, is there anything going on the federal highways?
Well, Mr. Chairman, there's a bill, as you know, that would increase the weight for logging trucks to 90,000 pounds on federally funded highways. I think that's incredibly important. There's a larger and larger area of agreement amongst folks in both parties. One of the things that has brought this to light, we had a hearing on timber prices. As we know, as timber prices went up, one of the issues was transportation costs going up. And there was a whole variety of reasons for that: fuel, cost of salaries for truck drivers, all those things had related to an increase in costs. So I think there's a heightened awareness of the need to make sure that we can get to the necessary stumpage, as it's called, or the logs from the forest to the mills, and increasing the weight limit to 90,000 pounds is a way to do that. So there is a piece of legislation in the transportation reauthorization bill comes up. It has to be done, I believe, in the next year. It's a great opportunity for us to do that. We'll see what happens in the transportation infrastructure bill. I'm not sure if there'll be any opportunity there for amendments. Normally, when those things come through, since it's already passed the Senate, it'll be a straight up and down vote. So it probably will not be the opportunity to add anything to that. But I am certainly fully in favor of increasing the weight limits. And I do know that there's increasing support for that across members of Congress. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done in the next transportation reauthorization.
Well, thank you for the update. That'd be big for New Canaan and our industry, I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know we only have a couple more minutes. Does anybody have anything else?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to talk about highways, and we do have a few more minutes, if you don't mind. Secretary Valentine and Congressman Whitman, I have to tell you that my sentiments are not just with New Kent County, but since 2016, my board members decided that my voice would be the loudest voice at our Richmond Regional Transportation planning organization. And so I've had the opportunity to meet Mr. Carlos Brown and work with Delegate McQuinn and also your staff, ma'am. And so it is, it's not selfish. However, when I speak with the Port of Virginia and you get the numbers of containers that travel 64 East trying to go into the Hampton Roads area, even when I read the newspapers and become a little disheartened, but a little hopeful when I see the agreement and the support of Congressman Whitman and Senator Norman in James City County and in Hampton Roads agreeing that absolutely I-64 needs to be widened. But even beyond that, I think about our New Kent County. And so just this past weekend, when we could have said at one time it's weekend only, regional only traffic that affects our Route 60 and our Route 249, we are a county where the majority of our households enter into their driveways, enter into 249, where we have our aging community that's driving, and also we have our youth that's learning to drive. And so they're trying to pull out of their driveways onto a secondary wagon road that was never intended for that type of traffic. So I can tell you that in talking to our fire and rescue, that the last couple of years, the number of accidents and incidents that have occurred on Route 249 and Route 60 has increased because of traffic coming off of I-64. I do understand that the intention or the history of our interstates was to be federally funded. I understand the need for money, but I also understand that when there's money to be given out, then we should be the voice that says we need it too. And so and ma'am, I know you need to get to Virginia Beach, so you need to come by here. And along with Congressman Whitman, it travels I-64 on occasion. So that is a major part that affects our secondary roads. It affects our secondary roads, and it's not just the evacuation. It's not just the damage that's done on our secondary roads that causes even more capital funds to be used by our local VDOT, but it becomes a challenge, and it becomes a challenge for new drivers, for restless drivers. They have to travel through our county, and people that's trying to get to the Hampton Roads area or trying to get out of Hampton Roads, and to be stuck in 29 miles of traffic for over an hour and a half. And at one time we would say, oh my goodness, here come Friday with the beach traffic, but it's no longer Friday. It's 7 days a week. So ma'am, I am so appreciative of you and Congressman Whitman to share this opportunity to hear our feelings, but I can assure you and reassure you that we have taken this on the road. And so, it's a road that we would absolutely want to be and widen and improve through here. So, again, I'm appreciative of you and to my fellow board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Locke, you got something real quick?
Yeah, I just have one more thing that I wanted to bring up. If you guys have the time, I'd like you to just consider the possibility of amending the rules for railroad crossing upgrades. We've had a number of fatal accidents in New Kent County, and all occurring in a similar stretch of track. And unfortunately, most of the crossings that we're dealing with are private crossings, and there's no grant structure that we've identified, and we're working with the SEC as well, that would allow for improvements at crossings that are private roads. And if there's any way possible that those rules can be amended for business travel or high volume private crossings, that would be a real huge change for some of these dangerous crossings, some with multiple fatalities. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Secretary Valentine, Congressman Whitman, we really appreciate your time this afternoon. And please, whenever you stop coming through New Kent, come by and see us. And thank you all for what you do for the Commonwealth and for the United States, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you so much. Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I know that, Mr. Lockwood, with your issue about the railroad crossings, we continue to look at what opportunities might be there. I know that's another situation where, we will look and working cooperatively with the state as to what opportunities are there. And Supervisor Page, you're exactly right. The secondary roads, having served on the Board of Supervisors for years, the main roads get a lot of the attention, but the secondary roads, are equally as important for our rural counties. So I can assure you that as these issues come up, we will do everything we can to highlight that it's not just the main roads, but it's our secondary roads too that deserve the attention. So I appreciate that. And Madam Secretary, I yield to you.
Well, thank you. Again, pleasure to be with you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me. I really appreciated being informed by your administrator of the issues regarding the railroad crossings in New Kent. I was not aware of those issues until actually I had received a letter from you. We are at this time working with the SEC and FRA and CSX on that issue. And Congressman Whitman, if there is anything that you see we can do here in Virginia, or if there's something we can do together, regarding these crossings, and in particular the private crossings, please let me know. But again, I was just so sad to read the letter. I do want you to know that. Yeah. So again, and we'll get back to you on anything we do learn with that. Yeah. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you. 64 and the 64 gap are a priority for my team and me. I am going to look forward to working with all of you on this and putting together a really strong partnership.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Madam Secretary, I think you bring up a great point. I will have Chris Hall from my office work with Nick in your office. I think it would be powerful if you and I joined together on a letter to both FRA and CSX about these private crossings and asking for their assistance in making sure that, the safety of the rails where it crosses roads, whether they're private or public, is a responsibility that has to be addressed, and ask for their concurrence that this needs to happen. So I think that would hopefully get it off of square one. So I look forward to joining with you and writing that letter and see if we can't get CSX and FRA activated on this.
Yeah, and to SEC, we'll throw them in too.
And SEC, that's right.
Yeah.
We will absolutely. We will include the SEC too. So
There you
we'll do it,
go.
absolutely.
So thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. You all have a great evening.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, New Penn Board. Again, this is Chris Hall, Congressman Whitman's office. Please let me know if you need anything else, but I will be ending the Zoom meeting now. Thank you again.
Goodbye.
All right, so we have about an hour and 10 minutes before we have our